Okay, let's get started. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining another Megaport Live Tech Drop-in session. Um, what is this about? If this is the first time you join this session, Megaport and Megaport, we host 3 sessions globally every Friday, led by our solution architects team from APAC, North American, and Europe. And this is a informal chat about pretty much Megaport products and the solutions. We do have some topics, but please feel free to bring any like hot topic or any question you want to discuss. Also, with this session, we are aim to do some live demos to show you how Megaport services work in the real world if you haven't got any chance to try it yourself. But please feel free to register on Megaport portal if you haven't already. It's free and you can do all the testing and see all the products available. Okay, let's a little bit about myself. Let's go through a little bit of information. My name is Morgan Wang, and I'm a solution architect in Megaport and based in Melbourne physically. I'm supporting our customers, Victoria, Tasmania, and the New Zealand based customers. I have my contact information here on the screen. So if you have any questions or requirement, please feel free to reach out. More than welcome to connect me via email or connect me on LinkedIn using the information provided on the screen. Okay, today's session, we do have a topic we want to talk about. It's about multiple ways to connect to ExpressRoute. As you know, ExpressRoute is a Microsoft way of privately connecting to the Azure cloud, and we do have quite some questions about how to establish ExpressRoute, given it is a very popular scenario where a lot of customers rely on Megaport to build their connection. Yeah, it probably beneficial to the audience today to talk about multiple ways that you can leverage Megaport to connect into ExpressRoute. But before that, I might just take a little bit time to talk about Megaport 101. So Megaport is one of the largest software as a service, software-defined network as a service provider globally. And also we've been nominated as the biggest data center connectivity provider globally as well. So currently we are in 930 data centers globally that across 26 different countries. And we have also pre-connected to over 100 DC operators and the public cloud providers, and over 280 on-ramp locations. So that provides our customer a great choice of if you want to connect to any particular provider, cloud provider or DC provider, there's a good chance that we already have established the connection. So everything you need to do is just establish this software-defined connectivity. And when the customer apparently decided the destination of the connection, they can bring the connection back to their own maybe data center, maybe own access product, and then decide how they want to use the connectivity. So there's a bit of confusing here about access product. Apologies for that. So we do separate our services into 2 different domains. One is access service. That's basically where the customer can initiate or terminate their connections. We have a physical pod, we have a cloud router, and we have a virtual edge device that can be used as an access service. And from the access service, everything else will be just a virtual cross connection. We call that a VXC. That's just a VLAN, pretty much a VLAN from or to your access service. And that VLAN can be used apparently between your access services, for example, DCI, data center interconnection, or from data center port to your MCR or MVE. And you can also use that for apparently public cloud connection. That's very common now, and one of the biggest use case of Megaport services. And also you can use that VLAN to interconnect to Megaport X, Megaport Internet Exchange, or even Megaport IP transit service to the Megaport transit router. So that's fundamentally how Megaport provides customer our services. You have access service, and you have VXC that connect to certain location you wanted. In terms of connecting to a port, the architecture is in the data center over the 930 data centers globally. We can provide the customer a physical port that customer can run cross connection into their own rack for a router or firewall or even multi-layer switch. And from that port, the customer can create up to 100 different virtual cross connections of VXCs to 100 different destinations. That could be a different access service support MCR or MVE. That could be cloud services, or that could be Megaport's own services, IX or IP transit service. And in quite a lot of data centers among this 930, we do provide option for customer to order ports in different diversity zones that's colored in red and blue. So they are placed on separate hardware. So in case of we need to bring down the hardware for maintenance or for software upgrade, if the customer have ports in both availability zones, they can better manage the failover and mitigate the potential downtime or outage. And that's pretty much how the customer use the port service. So they have port and route connection, cross connection to the router, and from their own router, establish the connectivity to something on the Megaport fabric. The MCR is just a replacement of the combination of port and the router. If the customer really not necessarily need to have a data center footprint, they have router only in the data center for routing, they can actually leverage a virtualized router MCR to do everything for the router as a router. And for example, route traffic between clouds and route traffic between other data center and other cloud. Saves a lot of physical effort, jobs and efforts to establish this cross connection and configure router in the data center, and even rent a rack space in the data center for the router. And there's another access service I just mentioned, MVE, Megaport Virtual Edge. It's a different version of the virtual appliance we provide to customer, where MCR is more like a turnkey solution. So we run that MCR for the customer. It's managed by Megaport, and everything can be configured through the Megaport portal. Where if the customer have more complex scenario, they need to enable multiple functions that MCR currently not support. MVE is another option. Apparently, we provide the MVE on the same platform as MCR, but instead of a turnkey solution, we then provide compute resource, networking resource to the customer for customer to run their own virtual appliance on the platform. So on the screen, you can see that there are three typical scenarios. MV can be used as a SD-WAN edge device, used as a router or a firewall. So we have quite a lot of options for customer to pick from, and there are more coming in this financial year or calendar year. There are a couple more other famous brands. That enables customer to log into the virtual appliance and do the configuration themselves, and probably enable more complex networking solution. Yeah, that's probably more flexibility for the customer. All right, that's about the 101 of Megaport, and I might just jump into the topic today, connecting to Azure ExpressRoute in multiple ways. So if you're familiar with Microsoft Azure ExpressRoute, you would know that Microsoft set this up in a really complex way because they want to achieve a lot of things with a single kind of solution. Um, the recommendation from Microsoft is always you set up as a maximum redundancy, which means to two locations here, location one and location two, they are separate, so you can create connection into the Microsoft Cloud from two different locations to mitigate the one DC down, potentially bring down all your services. And in each of the location, Microsoft also will ask customer to set up two peerings on their two Microsoft Enterprise Edge devices, MSE. So that's pretty much the same concept of um, electronic diversity, the availability zone in Megaport. Customer not necessarily need to do that. If you don't do that, you can still set up the connection and still transfer data to and from Microsoft, but that is definitely recommended way by Microsoft. And also because Microsoft provides private Azure hosting services and also some public services like everything in Microsoft 365. So with each Microsoft Enterprise Edge, you can actually set up two different peerings for two different kind of services, Azure and M365. So I might move on to this diagram. This is probably provide more details where if the customer have data center and they set up a pair of ExpressRoute circuits, that's maximum redundancy. In each of the circuits, they have access to two different Microsoft Edge. And on each of the Edge device, they can set up two different peerings, one for M365, one for Azure. So that's actually compressed every single use case into one setup. And because of that, Microsoft actually require Q in Q when you set up ExpressRoute peering. So that means um, the service tag, the service VLAN, the outer VLAN is actually for the particularly as MCE, but within the service VLAN, service provider VLAN, you also need two customer VLANs um, to peer for the Azure and the peer for the M365. So that's fundamentally how Microsoft designed the product. And apparently, if we don't touch anything from the first design, then the preferred way is you have your router to support Q in Q. So then in one VLAN within one service provider VLAN, you can set up two inner VLANs and two inner VLANs for two different peerings. But that can be a struggle a lot of time for a customer who is running a device which does not support Q in Q, or who is running a device which need to support Q in Q and a single tag. That can be really confusing. Two different type of configurations on a single device. So with Megaport implementation, what we can do is not only support this original peering, we can also actually to remove the service provider VLAN, to remove the outer tag, and only deliver customer the single tagged VLAN for a specific peering. For example, tags 3200 for the Microsoft on the MSEE1 and 3100 for Azure on the MSEE1, and you can place them on different ports or one port as long as there's no overlapping between the VLAN IDs. And even sometimes that can be really complex or not necessary because, for example, customer need 10 gig of um, whole bandwidth or 1 gig port. They need 1 gig whole bandwidth all for the Azure peering. They might just pick or choose to have this peering delivered to the port untagged. And in that case, there are also some way we can help customer with that requirement. We can untag everything and deliver each of the peering onto a specific port, dedicated port. So that means one port from customer side just for one peering. That makes things even easier, but in return, you need a lot of physical ports set up for different peerings. Yeah, that's pretty much the ways I want to probably talk about how to set up different ways to peer with Microsoft ExpressRoute. Now we can jump into demo to see how it can be done in the real world. I actually have set up couple ExpressRoutes circuits already because this takes a couple of minutes. So I set up before this session, and so I can use them for the demo. And also in the portal, I have set up two devices. One is my Cisco MVE. It's a Cisco router. I can I can log into SSH into the router, do the configuration myself. Another one is MCR. As I mentioned, it is automated way that everything can be done in portal and everything is automated. Let's just do the first one as the presentation. Just do the Microsoft default way, double tagging on the router. Just log into my router. What I need to do is I already copied the parent key from Microsoft. I'll do a Microsoft ExpressRoute Azure peering. And this will be my primary. Because I'll use Q-in-Q. So I have a Winix set up for Q-in-Q. Give that a default name. And I don't want to untag that whole thing. I'll probably give that a WLAN tag. The service provider WLAN 3000. And I don't want to enable this single Azure peering because that will translate double tagging to one single tagging. So I'll leave that double tagging in the VXC, within the VXC, and do the Q-in-Q configuration myself. So that's pretty much all I need for that VXC. I'll place that folder to send the request to Microsoft for the peering. The second one I want to do is still with this same parent key. I'll pick the second MSEE within Microsoft to do the peering. And this peering, I'll do the single WLAN tagging. And the single WLAN tagging, because I use the 3000 for my service provider tag just now, I probably use the 3100 for my single tagging. That's translated, actually merged the two WLAN IDs into one, because the inner WLAN ID I'm going to use is the 100. That means Megaport will take this 100 inner WLAN ID out and remove the service provider WLAN, and instead use 3100 as my single WLAN tagging for my specific peering. Normally it's a private peering, but technically it can be private or Microsoft peering. Okay, since I set up everything primary, I'll put the grab the secondary. I'll set up the secondary peering on the MCR, so we can see what that will happen on the MCR. I use a primary. Notice that MCR will ask me, because all the possibility is here. So MCR will ask me, do I need to set up the private or Microsoft or both? I'll just need the private. So I'll push down. That's MCR peering. Okay, I'll let the MCR work on the automation by itself and come to the private express route, see if anything being provisioned already. Not yet, but what I can do is I jump into the router, probably start to configure my queuing queue peering. So notice I use the second interface for the queuing queue peering. Interface use a sub interface 3000 for the peering. Apparently the first VLAN I have picked from the portal is 3000, and the second one I will be using 100, which is default from Microsoft for private peering, and IP address and dot 0.0.1. That should do, and router. Let's set up some BGP configs. I used 1.1. And Microsoft default number. Okay, the router config is down. Let's have a look what's happening in Azure. Okay, now I can configure the peering in Azure because I have only established a layer 2 VLAN connection. So I need to configure layer 3 on both ends. On the Azure end, I used a Megaport AS number on my router, 133.937. Hope that's not wrong. And the first one is .0. The second one, oh no, should be next one. And the VLAN is 100. That's that matches what I just configured on the router. Okay. Then notice for the first subnet, I have .0/30. So technically, I need to take the .1, the first IP address, and leave the second to Microsoft. So that's in my configuration. I'm using .1 on my sub interface, and the remote AS remote neighbor is .2 and using Microsoft AS number. And let's go back to the router. See the configuration running here. All right, the BGP already established. So that's Q in Q configuration. So I used the double tagging. Basically, still keep the internal inside the VLAN ID with my configuration. As long as the both end using the same configuration, I can peer with Microsoft with that. And the second one, you notice the primary express route, second subnet, I have actually in my portal configured to another VXC, which is my next interface. Now I'll just configure the peering on my next interface. PT base. Because I used VLAN ID 3100, that's combination of the 3000 and 100, easy to memorize. So I'll use that same subnet sub interface. In this case, 10.0.0.5 is me. Oh, got the one queue. Okay, the second single tag VLAN config is down. Have a look. And the second one is established. So that's a different way, and that's the reason it's being configured as a single tag is just because I used a function provided by Megaport portal. I translate this double tagging into single tagging, and I just pick the inner VLAN and use that inner VLAN, translate that into a single tagging 3100, and yeah, that's how easy it is. And the other thing is why I actually didn't directly configure the untagged peering. Instead, I used MCR is because let's have a look here. So within the MCR, you can see that the interface IP address already being filled. And if I jump into the secondary, um, if I jump into the secondary express route, the first subnet I have been, I've used that for the MCR peering, but you can see that I didn't do anything but this peering information, subnet, subnet, the secondary subnet, WLAN ID, and the PRSN already been filled. That is because when I initiate this Microsoft ExpressRoute peering from the MCR, we actually automatically generate all the configuration data and push that to Microsoft API. So that's definition of MCR is a turnkey solution. If you just want to simplify your setup and the solution, you can 100% just do that. And the MCR actually does everything for you. You don't need to even consider which IP address I need. Uh, that's how simple it is. I don't think we have any time for the next demo, which is untagged, but that's pretty much simpler than the first two. The only thing is the IP address won't be provided by myself, 10.0.0. It is provided by the MCR through the API when setting up this MCR-based peering. I'll just Yeah, come back to this one, see if there is any questions. Uh, about VXC, sorry, let me rephrase. The question is about can VXC support multiple peerings, uh, single VXC for multiple peerings? I think the answer is yes and no. Yes, is because, as mentioned, VXC itself is just a layer 2 connection, and we just see one VLAN ID pass through the VXC. And if you can somehow insert multiple inner VLANs into the VXC, then we can do multiple peerings with one VXC. But that not necessarily two different MSEEs. That scenario is more like this one VXC. You can have two inner VLAN IDs and one for the private peering, one for the Microsoft peering. But if you want to use Megaport or leverage Megaport to translate that double tagging into single VLAN or even untagged, that means on your side, you can only pick up one layer 2 connection, and that can only support you to set up one peering over the VXC. Hope that makes sense. I realized that we have already run over the time, and that's probably everything for today. And thank you so much for joining the session. Please reach out if you need to see any other like demos or examples or have any questions about other product or MCR MV. Thank you so much. Have a great weekend. Cheers. Bye.